Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's February 9th, 2016. This is a regular scheduled meeting of the Middlebury Selectboard. First order of business would be to approve the minutes from our last meeting of January 26. And are there any suggested corrections or changes to those minutes?
I have one.
Susan?
On page 9, in the board member concerns, line 461, it's supposed to be Ms. Rothblatt.
Spelling is correct?
Spelling's correct, just Ms., not
Gotcha.
Mr.
Yep. Anything else in the minutes? Very good. Susan?
Can I make a motion to, that the minutes of the select board stand approved as amended?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Susan and seconded by Nick to approve the minutes as amended. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are 6 in favor and 1 absent. Approval of the agenda. Laura and I were speaking briefly just before we started the meeting about the town meeting poll, and we agreed that that could come under board member concerns at the end of the meeting, just to have a brief discussion about its content and how we want to use it. If that's okay. Anything else on the agenda? Motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Thank you. There's no amendment.
Okay.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are 6 in favor and 1 absent. Citizen comments. This is an opportunity for anybody who's here for something that's not a part of tonight's meeting to address the board. Paul. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Select Board members, I'm Paul Ralston, a citizen of Middlebury, and I hadn't had an opportunity to review the agenda. I don't believe this issue is on your agenda for this evening, but I've come before you to ask you to reconsider a decision that you made previously to sell endorsements or advertisements or sponsorships on our new town hall. It's come to my attention that certain businesses in the community are being solicited by a very nice person, but somebody I really like and admire, doing the work of this committee, I believe, and seeking to garner $3,000 sponsorships in order to purchase granite benches outside of our new town hall. That those businesses will be graciously thanked with their name etched in the stone of those benches. And I think that's a very bad idea. I think it's a very bad idea that we blur the line of our government and commerce, or our government and our taxes. I believe the town hall is the seat of our government, and it is the place where citizens expect to have equal access. And the idea of sponsorships, commercial sponsorships, I believe is inappropriate. And I think as a body that we have the mechanism to fund items that we think are important at our town hall. They're called taxes. And if these, first of all, I'm surprised that we didn't plan for outside landscaping or benches, if that were appropriate. And if we did, why we didn't include the cost of them in what is a many $million project. It can't be that expensive. So I have a sort of philosophical objection to it, but I wanted to share with you a personal objection as well. I come before you and I sit here embarrassed to say that my company can't afford to buy one of these $3,000 benches. We were approached, and I thought it was considerate that we were. But I thought it was inappropriate to go to the employees of my company and ask them to divert money from their profits, from their retirement 401k plan, into expenditures for the town. Expenditures that I personally and we as a business contribute legitimately tens of thousands of dollars a year in taxes. And we as a small business in Middlebury, we've just made a over 7-figure investment in our facility on Exchange Street. We feel proud to be members of this community. We feel that in creating employment and improving the grand list, we're doing our part, and we pay our taxes. And I feel like that is the role of citizens, not to then be asked to contribute additional monies on top of it. So I'm embarrassed to say that my company cannot participate. Again, that's, my personal one. So, I stand here as someone who considers myself a successful business person in town, yet we aren't able to spend even more money on our town government. And frankly, philosophically, I don't think we should have been asked. So I ask you respectfully to reconsider the decision to seek advertisement for the town hall. If people want to pay more money in taxes, of course, they're always welcome to do that. But I don't think we should be soliciting over and above what is the legitimate responsibility of any citizen, be it a homeowner or a business owner, to pay in their taxes each year. So that's my piece.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Go ahead, Gary.
We didn't approve this, did we? Select Board?
Yes, we
did.
had talked about this. Maybe I can just refresh everybody that back several months ago, the town office recreation center building committee had some offers of support for different components of this project to do, as we thought of them, as enhancements. And so we formed a small subcommittee to look at how we would handle these kinds of things. I don't believe it was our intention to go out and actually solicit from businesses, but the intent was, if we're going to have people offering, or organizations offering support for different components, that we should have a list of things that would be enhancements to the project. And Paul, you speak to, well, things, if they can't be afforded, then we should do a different way of funding them. That's probably right. At the same time, we have a really tight budget on this project, and there are some things that we would like, but we know we can't afford, so we're not including them in this. And the idea was, if people are coming forward with an offer to support different aspects of this, as the Rotary, for example, has done, then we should determine what those kinds of things should be. So, having said that, my suggestion would be that we bring Paul's concerns back to the town office and rec center building committee to revisit that issue and come back to the select board with maybe another tactic. But it certainly wasn't our intent to go out and strongly suggest that businesses should be paying for different aspects of this, things that we would like to see, but we're not putting in the budget because they're not a priority for the budget at this time. So,
No, to actually reinforce that, I mean, that's exactly right. We were approached by organizations, Rotary being one of them, and some others, saying that they wanted to contribute. So at that point, a scoreboard, for example, was one of the things that had come up. And we realized we didn't have a way to address that. So as Dean says, that's what this group was put together. It wasn't meant to be anything, and fully appreciate your points, but it wasn't intended to be anything negative.
If I could just say, Mr. Chairman, that it was presented as all or nothing. It was $3,000 or nothing.
Okay.
And so we said we'd gladly contribute a few $100 or whatever, but that was unacceptable. It was $3,000 or nothing.
Okay, well then I think we'll take up the suggestion of the chair, and we'll have to revisit this
Gary?
one.
Being approached is a lot different than being solicited.
Yeah.
And if I knew that there's going to be solicitations, I wouldn't have voted for it.
Yeah, well.
understood. Yep.
Yeah.
Chris, member of the committee.
Yeah, I was just gonna reiterate what you just said, is that it wasn't to go out and solicit fundraising. It was how to handle people coming forward to us
Yeah.
and asking, I would like to do this. How do we handle that?
Yeah.
There was no solicitation.
But we were solicited,
Yeah. Understood.
and I know other businesses have.
Well, and as a taxpayer in Middlebury, I'd really like to say I'd just soon not be paying any more taxes, and we can't afford any more taxes.
Right. Well, as you know, Chris, the
Yeah.
building committee has made its
Right.
priorities on what parts of this project can be afforded within our budget, and we came up with a list of things, enhancements, if donations came in, how we would apply them. But I think it's worth revisiting it and making sure that we don't want people to feel uncomfortable, certainly.
Yeah.
Laura?
And I would just add that the budget did account for landscaping, so it was
Yeah.
part of it. And as already stated, yeah, we were trying to respond to groups that had approached us. And there are civic groups also that like to contribute from time to time. It could be artwork, it could be something else. So we just needed a policy for managing that. And that's what we were trying to do. And we know that your business has contributed to the community in many ways, and it's appreciated.
Great, thank you.
We'll be looked up.
Okay. Any other citizen comments? Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Excuse me, I'm gonna head home.
First item on our agenda is Mr. Mark Dunteman from the Natural Path Urban Forestry Consultants. And I'm not sure, Terry, are you introducing him, or how should this, or Chris?
Leslie, I think you should.
Whomever.
Well,
This
this
is-
is Mark Duncan, and Mark is an expert on community forestry, and we, as the ad hoc Middlebury Tree Committee, asked him to come and talk to us and to you about some of the concerns or some advice on how to manage the urban forest,
Great.
as it's called.
Okay,
Thank you. Welcome, Mark.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. I was introduced to the ad hoc tree committee through a project by the Department of Forestry, the state of Vermont. A year ago, Middlebury and about maybe a half a dozen to a dozen communities in Vermont received funding to conduct a tree inventory of public-owned trees in parks and street systems. And the second phase of that was a one-day workshop in each community this past fall, discussing some of the main components of community tree programs. And I was contracted by the state to conduct those workshops. And so I came to Middlebury, and I believe it was in October, and spent a day with the committee and some staff members and some staff from the college on discussing urban forestry issues. So the committee asked me to, if I had time, to come in and just spend a few minutes with the Selectboard to discuss some concepts of urban forestry, in particular to Middlebury. And that's why I'm here. So, about a month ago, I met with Kathleen and the committee just to discuss some of the issues, or not necessarily issues, just kind of focal points. And I just thought I'd spend this 10 or 15 minutes discussing them, and then just addressing any questions the board would have. So, first off, within my profession, I'm an urban forestry consultant, or a community forestry consultant. I work internationally with communities from small to very large, and a main focus of that work is that public-owned trees, whether they're in the town green or along street systems or parks, are an asset to the town, to really any town that has public space. And from the inventory that the state did in conjunction with the tree committee, on this core area of the central area of downtown Middlebury, about 800 trees were evaluated, along with about 130 trees over, I believe, in East Middlebury. And what's kind of astonishing is just even for the 800 trees in Middlebury, they provide about $60,000 worth of assets to the village or the town every year. And that's through stormwater retention, pollution particulate uptake, heating and cooling, reduction costs, things like that. The inventory was used by the state to run it through a U.S. Forest Service cost-benefit program that calculates these benefits. And so even with a relatively small number of trees, the benefits to the community is actually very, very large. The appraised value of those 800 trees is about just under $1.5 million. And so like a fire hydrant or a light pole or a street sign, there is appraised values of trees. And we use that number in other parts of the country for, say, for FEMA reimbursements. Say a storm comes through, an ice storm, for example, and damages the public-owned trees. If it's a federal disaster area, that number is a very tangible number that can be used for reimbursements for plantings and maintenance and hazard removals, things like that. So what we try to assist communities with is this concept that public-owned trees are part of the infrastructure. They make, in many cases, especially in Vermont, sugar maple, red maple, for example, are very much part of the Vermont landscape, whether it's out in rural areas or in the communities. And so I view it very much as part of the infrastructure. And so with infrastructure, it has to be maintained. Another concept that I try to invoke is that while it's relatively easy to plant a 2-inch tree, that 2-inch tree may be around for 80 to 100 years and has costs associated with it. And if it's done right, the costs are minimal to the town and the benefits are actually pretty positive. But if poor selection or poor placement, poor maintenance over time, then it ends up being a sink for costs to the Public Works Department and things like that in storm damage, service request calls, things like that. So it is really important that the urban forest, as part of the infrastructure of the town, any town, is viewed in that context. And so in that context, it needs care. And it can be done relatively inexpensively, but it's, and that's what I work with towns mostly on. Having said that, part of this project with the state of Vermont was that I gave guarantees to the state as part of this project to provide technical support at no cost to the communities. And so I'm here as an advocate for the town and for the urban forest and for the Public Works and the tree committee to invoke a program that's proactive, that minimizes risk to the residents. Unmanaged trees have the presence of any tree has a potential for some risk, branch failures, things like that, causing harm or property damage. And so risk reduction or risk management is a component of any well thought out urban forestry program. And the inventory actually is a good example of, I think of the 800 trees, Chris, there's 21 trees.
That they labeled as potentially
risky.
Risk.
Yeah. And so a very small percentage, which is typical, but taking this information and using it in a very proactive way to reduce liability exposure to the town. I work with a lot of villages, so it's I keep imparting that term. But very directly, very proactively trying to identify risk issues and mitigating them as needed. As with a lot of other municipal infrastructure, trees need maintenance. And as a minimum, they need some form of inspection. And most communities in the United States, from New England to the metro suburbs, try to develop anywhere from a 5 to an 8-year inspection program. And that means that a percentage of the trees are, as a minimum, looked at every year and possibly pruned or worked on. So if you take an example of the inner core of 800 trees, on a 7 or 8 year, to keep it simple, an 8-year pruning cycle, that means 100 trees would need to be inspected every year. And so I come out of a public works background, and so it's very much trying to develop programs that are within the resources of the community is very important to me. And so while some communities may be on a 4 or 5 year inspection cycle, others may be on 7 or 8, and it's all a function of resources. But what's really important is that those inspections become part of the operational program of the town. And even that could be done with a balance between volunteers, Public Works Department, and contractors. So every single community handles them very differently. But my own opinion, looking at a lot of the street trees and the town green trees here, an inspection and pruning of 100 trees a year is actually very, very manageable, still within existing budgets and stuff. So, the fourth item I was going to mention is just sustainability. Is that in order to maintain trees in any town, you have to have plantings, and so it doesn't mean you have to plant a lot of trees. But the inventory, I did identify a fair number of vacant spaces, and in order to perpetuate this forest over time, planting have to be occurring. And what we've learned from emerald ash borer and other issues like Asian longhorn beetle is that the choice of species for the future should keep in mind that there's always pressures right now, insect pressures that may cause large loss of public-owned trees in the community. The last thing I want to point out was, mention was Tree City USA Award. And this is an award that the town of Middlebury does not have, but I would suggest, I have suggested it to the committee, that it's a achievable goal for the town of Middlebury. It's an annual award that's presented to communities throughout the United States that meet 4 criteria designed by the National Arbor Day Foundation. And just a cursory look at Middlebury's program, I think you actually meet all 4 criteria. So the benefit of it is that it has a lot of public acknowledgement. Residents understand through some of the PR of the Tree City program that there's a proactive approach to managing the public-owned trees. Also, having the Tree City status helps in applying for state and federal urban forestry funding in the future if the town chooses to do that. So having that award is it's not a mandated criteria, but it's looked on favorably for communities applying for limited state and federal grant programs. We've used the Tree City USA in the past to highlight very culturally significant aspects of a town. For example, we did a planting in the Chicago area on commemorating Anne Frank in a Jewish community. We planted on a tree on the anniversary of the last time she wrote about a neighbor's tree when the family was hiding up in the annex in Amsterdam. And so it has a very strong connection, and there's no reason why in Middlebury there probably a couple dozen different cultural events or historical events could be linked to the community and make it embolden it into an annual event. So I think that's 15 minutes. So, was there any questions? The whole point was to just bring up some of these aspects that A lot of communities deal with public-owned trees are usually in the background when we're talking about infrastructure, but they really are a component of what makes Middlebury Middlebury. And so I'm here to advocate for it. I'm advocate for the tree committee and for the town. So, any questions?
Yeah, just quick follow. I wonder, did you have an opportunity to take a look at the report that was provided? We all got a copy of it some time ago from.
Yes.
I think it's our deputy tree warden, Larry Katz, who's done a lot of volunteer work with others on behalf of the town and has been very careful about species selection, for example, disease-resistant trees,
Yeah.
pruning, and managing the plantings along the streets of Middlebury as best he can, working with our Public Works Department. And I
Yeah.
didn't know if you had a chance to review the work that he'd done, and he provided us a report of the plantings throughout the community that they've done over the past several years.
Yes, I have reviewed
And their
that.
maintenance program and so forth, and if that fits into the criteria that you're discussing with us.
It does. The thing with using the inventory is trying to commingle the work that's been accomplished already, and the thing with the cyclic pruning program is that it guarantees that every tree is looked at,
Mhm.
and it may mean nothing needs to be done, but
Mhm.
it guarantees that at least the tree is inspected, and that this sounds like it would tie in very well with what has been occurring already.
Okay.
So
Good.
so
Good, thank you.
yeah.
Other questions for Mark? Nick?
You bring up the point of risk reduction, and I certainly appreciate that. You mentioned that, if you say selectively 100 trees a year are inspected, and it could be done by volunteer or professional. Seems to me that you need a degree of some training and expertise to do this, because there will be certain things that are obvious. If I look at a tree and I can see something that's obviously cracking and breaking, but does that catch all of the hazard? I mean, how much of it would be something that a volunteer, doing the best they could, wouldn't be able to do because they don't have that level of professional expertise?
Well, a quick comment on about a third of my work is being expert witness in tree-related fatality cases. I defend communities nationally in those cases, and the standard within the United States is, well, an attorney may have a different perspective on this, but the standard within the United States is visually obvious defects, and so the U.S. Forest Service and the state programs definitely tie in with an enhancement of, if volunteers are going to be used, identifying the 4 or 5 or 6 specific kind of defects that would be of issue. Okay, and so I would argue that it's possible to do. Keeping in context that any branch, tree part can fail and cause harm, and the diligence is defined as, within tree risk assessments, as whether the defect was visually obvious or not. Okay, so that allows for some flexibility of the use of volunteers. Okay, and there's certainly people on the tree committee that are more than qualified and certified.
Yeah, I can think of somebody.
Yeah.
Chris?
So.
Thank you. I'd just like to maybe continue Mark's comment to answer your question. I think you could very easily give a layperson 4 criteria to, as Mark said, to look at and to notice. And then you would go on from there, say, this tree is flagged because I see fruiting bodies on the trunk. And then take it from there on to someone at Public Works, tree warden, but if none of these 4 things are spotted, then move on to the next one.
Presumption is that
I think it's a very doable thing that you can give common person that small amount of knowledge and could do.
Yeah, very focused, and like Chris was saying, do an initial assessment. If there's something that was questionable, then that gets kicked up to someone with more experience.
Mark,
Yes,
does it matter when this inspection gets done? Like, is there an advantage to doing it in the winter, for example? Or is there is it seasonal dependent?
It's a good question. It's I have pros and cons of both. During the winter, you can see more, visual, structural issues, whereas during the summer, you can see health issues better. Health issues like a declining crown, for example, are indicators of maybe a long-term kind of senescence of the tree, whereas, to me, during the winter, the real structural issues become more visually apparent.
So I'm just trying to think of, so you pick 100 trees, and where do you start, and then when do you do it? And
Yeah.
so if you're trying to manage a standard or a policy, what do you recommend?
Typically, we do it during the winter.
Okay.
Because that would coincide mostly with pruning activities.
And does it matter where you start this 100 trees?
Nope. No. It's the thing is, with at least where litigation is concerned, is that every single town is going to handle the issue differently, and it's really about, okay, you identify an issue, and then what did you do to deal with it? And whether it takes 5 years or 8 years, to me, it doesn't matter. Is that you proactively approach it within the resources of the town.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Terry?
Yeah, I really want to say that I think it's the greatest thing that this ad hoc committee formed, that people came forward from the community and formed this ad hoc committee to address trees in Middlebury. And Larry was a lone wolf for a long time out there, and now he's getting a lot of support. And Chris being an arborist, and I'm an arborist, we're all on the committee. And one of our action plans is to create an urban forest management plan. But in addition to that, we want to train volunteer tree stewards. And by training them, then we can take them out and we can show them how to make proper cuts. We can show them the 4 or 5 ways to identify hazard trees. So this is sort of a blossoming program that can only enhance Middlebury, and it is not costing, at this point, is not increasing the budget. At some point it might, because there are trees out there that have to come down, that need to come down professionally, that exceed our ability. And then I just wanted to point out one other thing, and that's Tim Parsons up at the college is extremely diligent in his work. And if you drive down South Street Extension just before you get to Porter Hospital on the right-hand side, he just took down 2 willow trees that were standing by the skin of the tree. I mean, they are probably 3 feet in diameter, and they were standing by maybe an inch of good wood. And he took those down, and you can see the hollow on the inside of those trees. Had we had a bad winter storm and those trees came over towards the road, it would have been pretty detrimental to traffic through there. But that's just an example of what Tim does. He's got his program up and running. That's what he focuses on. And by going around and looking at his trees and examining them, they found those 2 trees, got them down. They'll replace them at some point, I'm sure. But willows particularly grow fast and furious here and are susceptible to that. So I just want to give kudos to the fact that Middlebury even has a committee now, and we're moving in the right direction. Maybe slowly, maybe in different ways, but and having Mark, all of us have been to a couple of trainings, one that Mark did, and we're all moving in the same direction. So it's really a neat thing for Middlebury, and I just want to give kudos to the fact that this many people care about the trees that grow here and are so aware of the pests that are coming through. And the town green, needs to be addressed. There's a tree with a giant hole in it if you go to the town green, and someday that's, it'll come down. So, it's our job to advise the powers that be of things that are outside our scope of work and require money and attention. So I just want you to know we're very, we're in it with all our hearts.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Other questions, comments?
I just had the question of, I really appreciate the presentation and getting to hear more about this committee's work. I've been kind of following it. What do you need from us? You know, I mean, it's sort of an update, but is there something that you need from us to sort of support your work going forward?
I think that's more for I'm here to assist the town
Right.
and the committee, so.
Right, but I wasn't sure if that was part of this.
Prioritize trees more than we have in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think we were just trying to make the select board aware of the benefits of a healthy, robust urban forest and how much the trees are working as part of the infrastructure and why they matter.
I'm just thinking, Dean, that at some point when they have their sort of plan in place, it's talking about infrastructure, maybe they
Mhm.
could come and talk to Public Works and
Sure.
collaborate a little bit with
Yeah.
Public Works and just, you know, we're doing facilities planning, it's sort of like another
Well,
facilities.
And I agree. I think that's a great place to start. I'm glad to hear, too, that you're building on.
Mm-hmm.
My concern was, I know there's a lot of work that's been done, and we've supported that, and I didn't want to toss that aside in favor of starting something new, and
No.
make sure we
No,
we fold that
I'm-
into what we're
Mhm.
planning to do now.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
certainly, just a closing thought is that, I started getting involved with urban forestry since college. I started the business in college, and I talked about that 2-inch tree. It's really about, there's no bad decisions as far as I can say. You learn from stuff, but it's about the long haul, and the work being done, the work done 40 years ago is demonstrated today. And so hopefully the work today will be someone's asset 40, 50, 60 years from now. And so I definitely appreciate all activities that have occurred up to this point. So
Great, thank you.
And I think our relationship with the Public Works Department is getting stronger. I just observed the Public Works Department out pruning trees and carting off a whole truck bed full of limbs, which is, a great sign that, they're caring about, because their equipment has to get in and under and around these trees. So by working together and making a common force is really, really a good sign. And that really, I think that, I just want to give kudos to Dan and his crew for really seeing forward, looking forward and seeing where their equipment has to get into and getting ahead of it before they rip something while they're in the middle of a project. They're getting ahead of it, taking care of it. So that's really cool.
Great. Thank you for your time.
thank you, everyone, and I'll just be working with Dan and the tree committee and Kathleen on.
Great update. Thank you all.
So-
Appreciate your time.
I have to I have to get back to Royalton. So
Drive carefully.
Thank you so much, Mark.
thank you, everyone.
Terry, contract for the pool house
Yep.
roof.
Yeah, it's up on the screen. Basically, in this year's capital budget, we have $33,500 to work on the pool house. The first thing that Judith Harris, when she did her assessment of our buildings, called out that the roof should be replaced. So we've been through 2 rounds of bids. This time was very successful. We made a mandatory walkthrough. Several people showed up. 2 responded with bids. They're in front of you. So Robert Miller came in with a bid of $18,684, and Jake Helm from Premier Roof Solutions came in with a bid of $12,692. And Judith and I did some due diligence by comparing apples to apples, oranges to oranges, making sure they're going to use the same materials, the same, that one wasn't using underlayment and the other, was, and so on and so forth. And you can see what both bidders submitted to our specific instructions, and they made it very clear that they're following those instructions. The one caveat that will add a little cost to this is that Bristol Electronics is the company that put our thermal solar panels up on the roof to preheat the pool water before it goes in the pool, and we feel it's in our best interest for them to remove those panels and then reinstall them, because they know what they're doing. And so you'll see that I've put a paragraph in that says that they would be happy to remove and reinstall them. They're gonna do it on a time and materials basis, and they estimate it would take 2 to 4 man-hours, so a few $100s will go a long way in assuring that we get those taken off and put back on properly. And right now, the shingles are kind of an off-white that are going on there, so
Okay.
from what I've heard from Jake at Premier Roof Solutions. So,
When would they be doing this, Terry?
they would have started soon, like maybe last week, but we had to go through
Weather,
this
yeah,
process,
yeah.
and now we're in kind of a funky weather. So what I heard from Jake was it would be late March, early April.
Okay,
Yep,
great,
as soon as we can. We've got to get it done before we open the pool,
okay.
and that's in mid-May. So I feel very confident it'll
Sure.
happen.
Questions for Terry?
Is there a reason for asphalt versus another material?
You're getting a little out of my realm
Okay.
of knowledge, but Judith Harris, who's very knowledgeable, asked for them to suggest an architectural shingle, which is Owens Corning Energy Star, true definition, asphalt shingle. You mean as opposed to a metal roof?
Right, yeah, for durability.
Well, if you look at the building, it is very old, and the roof could easily outlast the building if
Yeah,
you went
okay,
with the
that's
metal.
the reason, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It might outlast the asphalt.
To be blunt,
We're
we
talking
felt like
apples to apples.
it would be embarrassing to have the roof there and no building underneath it, so we thought replacing shingles for shingles was the best way to go.
That was the answer.
So,
Okay.
Okay, Terry, you're so honest.
sorry, I just wanted to,
It's good to know.
No way
It's
to
a
put
great
other-
question.
So what do we have for budget for this thing?
32,500.
That's for everything to do with the pool
Okay.
this year.
But there are many other things that
Right.
have to be done to the shiplap siding is cracking and crumbling, so that will become a project all in itself. You'll see me several times over the course till that money's gone, fixing that pool house up.
Well, it looks like you've gone through a fair process.
Very much so.
This is I would expect, this is I know. So I'll make a motion to award a contract to Premier Roof Solutions for the replacement of the pool house roof with a 20-year asphalt shingle for a total cost of $12,692. But I'd also like to add to that is plus a not-to-exceed price of $400 to Bristol Electronics for parts and labor to make the modifications to the heating system.
400?
I would,
That might be a little shy.
I might have to
I thought I
encourage
saw
you to
it.
go up.
2 to 4 hours to take them off and 4 to 6 to put them on. And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
And it's
yeah,
$80
an
I'm
hour.
going- I'm going
Yeah.
above it, I'm seeing, I'm right,
Yeah.
here. I'm seeing the first part.
I would say
Oh.
not to exceed $1,000.
$1,000.
Not to exceed 1,000, that's what I was.
That's better.
Yeah, sorry.
You're right,
Nate,
you're right, I
I
was just checking to see if you're paying attention.
I'm paying attention.
You were, and that's exactly what I meant to imply.
Okay, good.
Is there
Yeah.
a second to Nick's very well thought out
Second.
motion? Seconded by Gary. So the motion's made and seconded to support Terry's recommendation to award the roofing contract to Fairhaven's Premier Roof Solutions for $12,692 and funding for Bristol Electronics for the solar panel removal and reinstallation up to $1,000. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're 6 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you.
Great, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Good work, Amy.
You'll be seeing a lot of me, a lot of RFPs out there. Thanks.
Okay, we're a little behind on our public hearing, but
Sorry.
I thought you were here for the public hearing. So this is an opportunity to take comment on our proposed amendments to the ordinance restricting alcoholic beverage use on town property. And this is the changes that were made to this policy that we discussed at our last meeting by Donna and Gary. Donna, do you want to quickly just summarize the policy revision again?
Yeah, let me try to get, I'm gonna try to get it open on mine if I can. I'm having a little problem
Do you
over
wanna-
here. Okay. I'm not sure, yeah, I better use yours, mine's not
Go
gonna show
for
in
it.
color. So at our last meeting, we went through the changes to the alcohol ordinance. There were several sections that were amended. In section 101, we added to control the use and possession of alcohol beverages on town property and to preserve the privilege of responsible entities properly licensed or permitted and approved by the Vermont Department of Liquor Control to possess and serve alcoholic beverages on town property during public and private events while assuring the safety of the public and the protection of property. The next section that underwent a change was section 205. An entity includes an individual, business, corporation, partnership, unincorporated association, or any other legal organization. In 208, in the same section, we amended the reference to the town maps. It will say, or under the authority and control of the town within the village area as defined on map 138, part of a set numbered 138 through 143, titled Town of Middlebury, Vermont, Addison County Regional Planning Commission, 1968, as recorded in the Middlebury Town Clerk's office, which includes Chipman Hill Park, Meanswood, Battelle Woods, Wright Park, and East Middlebury Recreation Park. Under section 3, number 301, we added, no person shall have in their possession an open container having any alcohol, malt beverages, spirits, or Venice beverages while on town property or in any vehicle located on town property unless attending a public or private event where a permit has been issued specifically authorizing the serving of alcohol, malt beverages, spirits, or Venice beverages on town property. Under section 4, we simply changed the opening to the paragraph to say an entity requesting alcohol, etc. In section 402, or number 402 within that section, an application shall be filed at least 45 days prior to the event to allow sufficient time for the Select Board to review the application at a regularly scheduled Select Board meeting. This 45-day requirement may be waived at the sole discretion of the town manager if, in his or her judgment, the applicant has satisfied the requirements of section 501 of this ordinance and sufficient time remains from the date of submission for the Select Board to consider the application at a regular Select Board meeting prior to the event. Under section 5, official action on the permit, number 501, the town manager, before submitting the public assemblage permit application to the Select Board for approval, shall determine whether, A, the applicant has submitted a complete and accurate application, B, the applicant is able to comply with the general conditions of the public assemblage permit, especially in regard to serving alcohol, malt beverages, spirits, or Venice beverages, C, adequate arrangements have been made to ensure the safety of the public at large and persons attending the event and for the prevention of damage to public and private property. Number 502, the Select Board may approve with amendments, or deny a permit application. At any time, the Select Board may amend or revoke a permit if it appears that the arrangements or conditions contained in the permit will no longer prevent injury to person or property due to a change in the circumstances under which the permit was granted. In section 6, the appeal process, language was changed to read, an entity may appeal the Select Board's decisions to deny a permit application by filing a written notice with the town manager within 5 days of the decision. The Select Board will consider the appeal at their next regularly scheduled Select Board meeting. The Select Board may affirm or reverse their decision or attach such additional conditions to the permit as will, in their best judgment, protect the safety of the public at large and persons attending the event and prevent damage to public or private property. And those were the additions within it.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from anybody? Hearing none, then I would close the public hearing at this time and ask the board if it wishes to consider a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Go for it, Gary.
I move adoption of the ordinance.
Is there a second?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll
Motion's
second.
been made by Gary and seconded by Susan to adopt the ordinance for restricting alcoholic beverage use on town property as amended. Any further discussion on that motion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're 6 in favor and 1 absent. And so our board's action will be noted in the official record and become final 40 days following adoption unless a petition of 5% of the legal voters of Middlebury is presented objecting to its adoption. Thank you, both Donna and Gary, for your work on this.
And many
And
thanks
Chief
to-
Hanley.
If I can add, it, yes, Chief Hanley and Ian Webster and
And
Chris
Ian Webster.
English
That's
as
right,
well.
yeah,
Thank you
Chris,
very much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chris English is also,
Okay.
as was Beth.
And Beth, great. Next up is the inspection and review of the ladder truck. Chief David Shaw, welcome. So, we have a quote for someone to do the inspection and review
Yes.
of the ladder truck. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, so we're at the point in the process, after we met with the subcommittee, trying to find some vendors to do an evaluation of our ladder truck. We ironically had a vendor in town the day that we last met, and
Oh, no
they're
kidding.
processing an evaluation form for us. Myron has been working on others. It's proving to be a pretty interesting task at the least. So we found another vendor, New England Fire Equipment and Apparatus Corporation in New Haven, Connecticut. Their first choice was for us to bring the truck down there, them to do a thorough evaluation on their site. That truck, to be quite frank, will not make it to New Haven, Connecticut. That truck will have mechanical problems getting that far. So it was in our best interest to have them come here and do an evaluation. And so that's what we're proposing tonight, is that they'll send staff here to our facility, do an inspection and evaluation at our facility, and then travel back and come back with a quotation.
And so the recommendation is the estimate of $5,000 includes their inspection and report?
Yes,
Okay,
and that's the high side. What we have from them is $3,500,
okay.
but
Up to
up to, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
questions, comments? Nick?
So then they'll do the inspection on site, they'll give us a report, and they'll give us a report I'm assuming is going to include what it will cost to bring this up to a contemporary standard of some form for X number of years of service life.
Yes, what we're asking them to do is bring it back to its level of service of when it was new.
Okay.
That's the highest achievable thing we can do with this piece of equipment at this time.
Mm.
Yes. This company also leases equipment, so we had some talk in that subcommittee about what we would do if we followed through with this
Sent it out.
process, and they do lease equipment,
Oh,
and
interesting.
he said that 90% of the people that follow the refurb, whether it's a ladder or some other piece of fire equipment, usually rent a piece to take that out, especially a key piece like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, that makes good sense.
And that price is varied based on what he has in inventory at that time.
Other questions for Chief?
Just to
Shaw?
be clear, so they would rent
Sure.
the latter part of it?
What would happen is if this truck can be updated. The reason we asked, and the fire department's been incredibly diligent on this, from the perspective of making sure, one, that they have a proper piece of equipment to conserve the community, but then also that it's, the cost associated with this vehicle is being well managed. Questions came up as to whether, because the vehicle, one of the aspects of the fire department here is they take tremendously good care of the equipment. And so, when you look at it, it looks perfect. But it is at this 20-plus year age cycle. So we asked that we get a good detailed inspection to determine if in fact the truck needs to be replaced or if cost effectively it can be rebuilt. The aspect that Chief Shaw mentions is that we will, if this truck can be rebuilt at a reasonable cost, it will have to go to someplace. And so we will be without this.
Oh,
piece of
and that's when
equipment.
we would use the
So what
rental.
happens is
Okay.
this New
Okay.
England Fire Equipment, from what
Okay.
he's saying, has the ability to provide
Right, okay, I
a
understand.
loaner, if you will, that we're going to rent and still be able to maintain the service. It's an excellent amount of money to spend in investment, and it's very wise. So, it's a good good idea.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Gary.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate, David, your work on this, because this is exactly what we had talked about in our committee, to try to find someone like this to be able to do this assessment.
Right.
and Make that case.
So we're
Gary?
chugging along. It's not
Yeah.
a rapid pace, but
That's good.
it brings up a couple other questions.
Well,
I
it's a
still
proper
have your
pace, though.
attention.
It's a proper
Oh,
pace.
definitely.
You know, at the end of the day, we're going to get a report that says either A, the vehicle can be upgraded for a reasonable cost, or B, it's just not worth it, and one should look at replacement, and that's a reasonable thing to do.
Gary?
So, would they refurbish it here, or
No, they would take it to their facility.
how's it gonna make it if it won't make it down there?
It would have to be trailered down. Yeah.
Yeah, make it. Come on, David. I would.
Last time we took it to Massachusetts, we had to stop twice to have mechanical work done to it. Yeah.
What you do is.
5-hour trip took 11.
You just follow the
They're burning
Greyhound.
rubber.
You follow the Greyhound
Slow
route. so you
down.
Get
There
it
you
right.
I was going pretty slow for a while. I guarantee you that.
All right. Thank you, David. Any other
Just
questions?
a couple other things. So, at our last subcommittee meeting, we talked about an equipment replacement schedule,
Mhm.
and we have put that together.
Okay.
So we're ready to meet with that subgroup again and go over that as well.
Great.
And we're also ready to start putting together an engine replacement committee. We're already a year late on that, and so as we meet with the subcommittee, it would be our proposal that we start looking at the replacement of our oldest engine.
Is this a fire equipment
It is,
subcommittee?
yeah.
Okay, that's the subcommittee of the Public Safety Committee? Or it's just, it's a committee?
It's kind of its own.
Committee, okay.
Yeah.
It's sort of its own. It really came about, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it came about because of this issue coming along with this
Mhm.
ladder truck and,
Right.
and how to deal with it. So it was there.
Good. Other questions for Chief Shaw? Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the allocation of up to $5,000 from the Fire Equipment Fund to New England Fire Equipment Apparatus Corporation for the analysis of the town's ladder truck.
Thank you.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the allocation of up to $5,000 from the Fire Equipment Fund to do an inspection of the town's aerial fire department truck. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We got 6 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Kathleen, will I need a special PO or anything? Yeah.
You just got it.
I knew she was gonna shake her head that way.
Yeah, have Jackie draw one.
Oh. So, next up is to review the proposed revision of the easement deed to Churchill's parcel on One Forest Lane, to approve for publication and notice for the conveyance of municipal real estate. And this is a sort of a continuation of the process we went through just a couple of months ago.
Right.
Kathleen.
Back in July 2015, the board approved a similar transaction for 2 Forest Lane owned by Christopher Potter. So this is a situation where the Churchills, Raymond and Teresa, have a garage that they had on a piece of land that was leased from the town, and this would give them an easement for marketability purposes. And allow them to maintain, repair, and replace the existing garage with a similar type structure for use as a garage only.
And allow them to access town property if they had to. There was a couple of minor changes there. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Any questions? Pleasure of the board.
I'll move that we approve posting and publication of the section 1061 notice relative to town-owned land at 1 Forest Lane, pending approval by the Churchills.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Donna. Any further discussion on the motion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are 6 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you.
And the second part of that would be to authorize me to sign the easement deed relative to the town-owned land 30 days from the date of publication of the 1061 notice, if there is no petition filed during that time.
So moved.
Motion has been moved by Susan and seconded by Donna?
Somebody.
To authorize the manager to sign the easement deed for this parcel, should no petition be filed objecting to the proposed conveyance. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are 6 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you. Next up is the proposed consent order for compliance with the town's National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Dan, are you dealing with that? We hope.
About 90 seconds, that work for you?
Okay, so I'll try to make this hopefully short, sweet, and clear. So, from my perspective, the state and the EPA are working together to try to reduce some of the pollutants that enter Lake Champlain. In our situation, via Otter Creek. So, we've had these things in our permit called combined sewer overflow. And basically what it shakes out to be is that US EPA is maybe clarifying the definition of what is a combined sewer overflow with the state, and therefore telling the town of Middlebury that we don't need to have any combined sewer overflows anymore because they don't fit the definition anymore. So in order to have a combined sewer overflow, you need to have a combined sewer system, which in the clarity of this process, we don't have anymore. So contrary to places like Burlington or Rutland who have a combined sewer system. So for the public, combined sewer system is one that intentionally takes stormwater flows and wastewater flows in the same pipe and send them to the wastewater treatment plant for treatment. We have a separate storm sewer for the most part, though there may be some things we maybe don't know about. We know of one culvert that goes into a sewer manhole near the Marble Works, which will be repaired as far as a railroad project. That's why it's still waiting. But for most practical purposes, we do not have a combined sewer system. So therefore, the EPA would like us to remove, or I should say eliminate, our combined sewer overflows. They're more correctly called sewer surcharges. In other words, when the rains come and the pumps at the pump station can't keep up and wastewater ends up running into Otter Creek, which Bob has to document and report to the state. He does this very well. They would like us to eliminate them and make that zero. So what US EPA has come to us is with this arrangement, if you will, to get us on board with addressing these combined sewer overflows that really aren't combined sewer overflows. So this is the language that they're proposing to us, their findings. They want to work with us on a schedule of getting these taken care of. So there's a few calendar, or dates I should say, that milestones they'd like us to hit. Hopefully you've all taken a look at that, but by next December of this year, they'd like to have a basically some assessment of the town's legal authority, page 4 there, to address roof leaders and sump pumps and other drainage connections. And also by next December to provide an evaluation of some of the things they'd like to see us address. So we've already taken care of 2A, but they want a list of all our overflows, which is easily done. Bob's already has that accomplished. Anyway, I don't want to read the whole thing, but then by December 31st of 17, they would like us to submit a overflow control plan for their review and approval with a variety, that's on page 5 there, variety of things that they'd like us to complete. They full well understand that This may be some significant financial commitment, and we'll work with the town as far as a timeline to start to address and eliminate these overflows. So there's the short version.
Here's one of my questions for you, Dan. One of my concerns when I was reading through this is that we have typically had those unusual weather events where our pump stations overflow, and I'm not sure how that can be eliminated. One of our goals was to take as much of the stormwater out of the sanitary system as possible to reduce that, which you've done a good job of doing. But we still have those events when you have those unusual storms.
I think unusual storms are just gonna be that,
Yeah.
unusual storms. And, I know, things like Irene, or we had a couple large rains in '08 and '09. And we had issues with, we lost the Lower Plains Bridge in '08. So those are gonna happen. And whether EPA would fine the town for that, I don't know. They're more concerned about these, 2 to 3 inches that happen, and what can we do to eliminate them. Now, if you looked at some of the findings that they had, we've done some work since 2010. So they would say, let's hear what you've done since 2010. And so the wet well was added since then, or right about that time actually. We did the cleaning of the force main. So the occurrences, I think we've had one overflow at the main pump station since 2010. But you don't really get a sense of that when you read this. So some
Yeah.
steps that we've taken since then has knocked
Reduced
that
it a
down.
lot, yeah.
Right. The main issues are really Pump Station 9 collection system and Pump Station 3 collection system. 9 is the Waybridge Street area. 3 takes in some of this area and South Street. So when we were talking about doing some of the repairs in South Street, that would help
address that.
that situation. So so those are some of the really the 2 main hot spots that we have.
Questions for Dan? Laura?
So like those 2 hotspots would be on our radar for future public works work? Is that what
Right.
we're saying?
South Street has for about 6 years now.
Right, and one of the areas we had issues with in number 9, we did, well, it would be 2 summers ago. But that is, again, since their report of going back to 2010. And then I also hope to get a small sanitary sewer repair on Waybridge Street out for engineering and planning and built late summer, fall, if I can get to it. We know there's another substantial infiltration issue there. And not that would solve all of the issues at Pump Station 9, but it's a pretty good number. So, yes, it will dictate where we're gonna go next with some of our infrastructure improvements.
So it sounds like we're being really responsible for managing pollutants, and that's good.
Yeah, and I have to say, the gentleman from EPA was very complimentary about, the way the plant is run, the way the collection system is run and maintained, the amount of money that we've put into it. He said, don't look at this as something you guys have been doing wrong. This is more about how the state has been addressing combined sewer overflows and the definition and how they've, permitted these things to be there. But now the definitions are changing, and this is going to be the new way forward.
Do they have a schedule of fines and things like that? There's,
No.
it's really,
They're working through it.
right, but you just don't know how that's gonna play out until it plays out,
Right.
so, okay.
They've been pretty much all about, we want to work with you to
Mhm.
start to address these things.
Okay.
So where are you with the plan that we need to approve?
So what we've done, we met with Wayne Elliott of Aldrich and Elliott, who's done some infiltration work for
Mhm.
us, and Town Council Benj Putnam on Monday, along with Bob Wells. So we are going to suggest some different wording for some of the violations that they have, updating that and really clarifying that some of them weren't violations in our interpretation. And also, as far as the timelines included, we had pushed back on earlier timelines, so we believe that these timelines, for the most part, are doable by us. I would like to ask the board to approve the consent order at its next meeting when we have a
Okay.
final draft for your consideration.
Great. Questions for Dan or Kathleen on that? Okay, we'll look for that at our next meeting. The readoption of the road standards.
Okay. Annually, the board has to readopt road standards. These are standards developed by V-Trans. They're part of the, well, they like all towns to have some uniformity in how gravel roads, rural roads are maintained and bridges maintained and so on and so forth. And so by adoption of these annual standards, it allows us to, when we submit for grant applications for bridge and culvert work or Class 2 paving grants, it allows us to go to a higher number of state participation. 80% goes to 90%. It also is a way for a means to ensure, hopefully, that if there are any other flooding events or catastrophic events that need reimbursement by FEMA, that if the work was done according to these standards, then FEMA will compensate the town for that. And so if you build something that's not done to these standards, when that event happens, you will not be getting reimbursed. So it's a way to get uniformity across the state for all municipalities. So that's what these standards are for. So you will please adopt them and then authorize Kathleen to sign the certification.
If there's no questions, pleasure of the board.
Make the motion for this board to adopt the minimum standards set forth in the town road and bridge standards for construction, repair, maintenance of all town roads and bridges.
And
Well, you-
No need to authorize me to sign it. I have a document for you to sign, since you're all here.
end of motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gary. So motion has been made by Nick and seconded by Gary to readopt the road standards as described by Dan. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have 6 in favor and 1 absent, and signatures coming around.
Thank you.
Is that Nick and Gary?
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Welcome.
Okay. The Main Street Merchants Row Overpass Bridge Replacement Project. Your local management team has been meeting furiously the last couple of weeks. I think we've had 3 or 4 meetings anyway, culminating with one today. At our meeting back on January 28th, ACEDC Director Robin Shai brought together some thoughts about some potential funding sources for us, and Robin has graciously agreed to come tonight to explain what those 2 grant opportunities would entail and how we might go forward on them. So I'll let you off the hook first.
Thanks. I appreciate the time.
And thanks for doing that, Robin. I appreciate that.
Oh, sure.
And Robin's been at several of our meetings too, which is
Yes.
good.
Well, this is my town too, so
Yeah.
it's important to me.
It is.
On a number of levels, so thanks. Boy, you guys cover a lot of territory in one meeting, don't you? So we're switching to railroad bridges and businesses in downtown Middlebury.
We make the transition quick too.
Yeah, you have to.
And sometimes we actually keep up.
What I'd like to do specifically tonight is explain this proposal and then ask for 2 decisions on the part of the select board. So I'll explain it first and then tell you exactly what I'm hoping you'll agree to. So the primary proposal, and really the one I want to talk about tonight, but I can talk about the other one that I think you're thinking of, Dean, is with the USDA Rural Development, they have a Rural Business Development Grant Program. This comes out once a year. I've done grants under this program before for the benefit of businesses in Addison County, so I'm pretty familiar with the program. It's a competitive grant, and it's designed to support very targeted technical assistance and training or other activities leading to the expansion or development, or in our case, saving of businesses under difficult times in this particular case. But the requirement is that it focuses on what they call small and emerging businesses, which is a technical term meaning businesses who have fewer than 50 employees and less than $1 million in gross profit. So that probably covers most of our downtown businesses. This year, typically the state has a pretty small allowance of money. It's about $135,000 outside the Northeast Kingdom that's available for the whole state. I have a very good relationship with the USDA. They suggested, when they knew that I was looking to apply for some funding, that they're doing a letter of intent process this year. They've never done that before. I think it's a great idea. It's a lot of work to put together an application. And this way they get to see the universe of people that are interested, and then sort of invite people to apply for the full. I don't think that's going to be a problem in this particular case. I can't guarantee that, but I've been led to believe that they're very supportive of this concept. So they also, I mean, to the point where they actually asked me to submit more than one letter of intent. So I gave you a sample. It's completely in a draft form, just so you can see what the form looks like in an attempt to fill it out. I don't have a commitment from businesses at this point, and I can talk about that in a minute. So potentially the 4 letters of intent that I could apply for, 2 would be for a revolving loan fund and 2 would be for a straight grant. The maximum they wanted people to apply for was $30,000. They called me on the phone and said, you can apply for $30,000, but I suggest that you submit another one for more than that. So we kind of agreed on 30 and 50. This is what leads me to believe they're looking to help us out here. So what I'm proposing to do is possibly apply for as many as 4, a $30,000 and a $50,000 revolving loan fund, a $30,000 and a $50,000 straight grant program. In either case, the purpose of this would be to provide technical assistance to businesses that sign up to do this, to help them think about their marketing plan and getting their businesses online, and then working on new market channels, and then helping them get technical assistance to actually either create a website or get more involved. For some it may be Facebook, but whatever the right social media channels are to help them really be able to find new ways to attract customers that aren't going to be necessarily the foot traffic that comes downtown, because we don't know how that, we know there's going to be an impact. And so some businesses do that well now, other businesses do not, and this could be a way to help them. So that is in broad terms what it is we're looking to do. The area would be the downtown district. We could decide on a size of it. My thinking is that, if we had as little as $30,000, we might have 5 businesses at 5,000 or 6, something like that. If we had as much as 50,000, we might be able to have maybe 13 businesses. So that's kind of the range that we're talking about here. And so if we did a revolving loan fund, which is one of the 2 options, we would get to keep the money and revolve it, so it could be used again. That's the good news. The bad news is the businesses have to pay it back. So it is a loan for them. So that's not unlike what we did with the Champlain Bridge Loan Fund. In that case, we also had money from the state, and we had no principal and no interest payments for 2 years until the bridge was back up and running. And in fact, 6 of our 7 loans had paid back, 2 paid off, and everybody else is paying ahead, and only 1 loan was a not so good loan. Actually better than we thought it was going to be. After 2 years of not hearing from us, then they all started paying it back, which was quite something. So there's a question of, does that make sense? Do we really want the businesses to have to pay this back on top of everything else? Do we do something like a 2-year interest only and then do principal? And some of that I might have to check with the USDA on whether we could do that. But then we'd have this revolving loan fund that we could use for Middlebury. It would be small. It's not like Bristol, who has $750,000 in a revolving loan fund, but it would be something. It's also a little more work to set it up. Obviously, we run a lot of revolving loan funds, so we could do that, but there would be policies and things like that, because the town would be involved in this. The other option is the straight grant. which is sort of a one-time deal. It would be a one-time deal for the businesses, but we wouldn't have anything back to then reuse another time. It would be once and gone, which is the other grants that I've done, that's the way they've been. If we went that way, I'd propose that the businesses would be asked to pay a little bit to contribute. When this was done, something like this in Barry, for example, the downtown businesses were asked to pay $100. So we're not saying pay a lot, but, you know, and then you might get $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 worth of technical assistance in web. So it's really not, it's just a little skin in the game to
Sure.
be committed. So those are the two ways that we're looking at this. When the USDA does this, the whole thing is done on a scoring system with points. And there's 200 and something points, 210 or something. I've never actually added it all up, but it's around that. And the reason I'm coming to you all is you get 50 points for a first-time applicant. The town of Middlebury has never received a USDA grant like this. I checked it with them, and they confirmed it. And so if the town is the applicant, then we get 50 points on the project, which puts us ahead of other places that don't. I could be the applicant, but we'd lose those 50 points. What I would be is the grant administrator. And we get points for that because we have a lot of experience running these grants, and so that's another section of points. If the town were to do it and be the grant administrator, they'd lose out because there isn't that experience on running these particular programs. So it's really a win-win to have the town be the applicant and maybe the administrator. What that means is I write up the whole grant thing, I do the invoicing and reporting, and Jackie would write the checks once a month, and I'd give a whole list. And this is what I did with the town of Shoreham when we worked with Vermont Refrigerated Storage. The town was the applicant. We did all the work in our office, and they wrote a few checks once a month over the period of the time. So it wasn't an onerous thing for the town of Shoreham. So that would be the first decision, is the town willing to be the applicant? And then the second decision is that there really needs to be a match for this project. And again, there's a whole point system, and the more that you give, that you match, the more points you get. But typically, and so there's this sort of range, if you're going to give the equivalent of 85% match, you get more points, and then 50%, and then there's a range between 26.1% and 50%, and that's sort of the sweet spot for doing a match. Below that, if you can just get to that 26.1%, you get a chunk more points. So there's no reason to go to the high end unless you would like to and have a larger project, but this I have found to work just fine at that 26.1% amount. So doing the math for that, if a total project was, if we got $50,000 from the USDA at the high end, right, the total project would be $67,660, which means that the town of Middlebury match would be $17,660. It would be less than that for the $30,000. But my second request would be for either an approval tonight or at least conceptual approval if you had to vote some other time on a not to exceed $17,660 match for this grant. And we'd rather do a not to exceed because if for some reason we don't use all the funds, then you're not responsible for, right? So it goes
Can
that
you
way.
apply for both the straight grant and the revolving loan fund?
I'm going to put in a letter of intent for both.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to see what they say. And, they're really great to work with. So I can have further conversations. I could sort of give them the kitchen sink and then say, well, this is what we're thinking. What are you thinking? And what if we did it this way or whatever? So once we get it in, we can still do some negotiating around that. And so I have mixed feelings about it because I really like the idea of having a little revolving loan fund that the town would then have. But then are we asking businesses to pay something back that at a time that's already difficult for them? So how do we work that out? And so that's why I'm glad we don't have to decide like right now. They didn't give us much turnaround time, but we have April 15th is the date that the full application is due. So we have time to sort of flesh that out.
So if we got the revolving loan fund and we didn't have the interest from the businesses to take part in it? It just sits there until we do have some interest, or does it have to?
Well, the
I
money
know
would
when
go.
it comes back, it's available again, but.
Right, it wouldn't be available again until after. Now, I have not done, I have revolving loan funds with the USDA, but I don't have it through this particular program. But this is a grant from our perspective of receiving the funds. We don't have to pay anything back to the USDA.
Right,
But we can't reuse it if we don't get the money back from the businesses.
right,
Mm.
right. It's a
So
loss.
so it wouldn't
It's
be
a grant.
available, right, it wouldn't be available. I mean,
Yeah.
you'd need to make the terms so that they could actually pay it back.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, I'm just thinking, you could frame it a lot of different ways, but if it became a revolving loan fund for that specific purpose going
Yeah.
forward, then it would always be there for. that.
Right,
Mhm.
right, and you could say that this is just for downtown businesses. I mean, the businesses on Exchange Street are not likely to need a $30,000 revolving loan. I mean, they take that the whole thing, or you
Yeah.
know what I mean. So, and my thinking, talking a little bit with Kathleen, is that where the match would come from would be the downtown improvement district, because don't they pay
Yes.
Mhm.
a little
Yeah.
extra? I mean, this seems to be like the perfect thing for those funds to
Right,
go
and
to.
We just had not too long ago, a decision by the DIDC on what they wanted to spend funds for coming up.
Uh-huh. And so
This
this
year.
would be a great way to leverage those
Right,
funds,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
by a factor of 3, basically.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that's what they want to use those for.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
this seems so clear, you know, if the town was ever to be a first-time applicant, what better reason could you do it than because we have this major
I was just
project?
thinking that if we went just for the revolving loan fund and for some reason didn't get any takers right away, we'd be remiss in not asking for the straight grant as well, but can we do both?
Well, we wouldn't get funding for both, we'd
Okay.
only get
So we
funding
need
for
to make
one.
the choice.
We don't have to decide yet. I can put in the letters of intent, and then we can continue that conversation.
Okay.
The thing is that when the final grant application goes in from our office, we actually have to have businesses who've pretty much signed up.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
And then we have to have letters of support from those businesses. We can change out businesses if things turn around, but we can't just say, trust us, we'll find people to lend the money to. They really kind of want
They
you
need
to
to
have
know.
that pretty well thought
Sure.
through.
Great.
So, yeah.
Great.
And then the other part with the application would be that I'll have to get some documents, and I can work with Kathleen on this. We'd have to get, proof of the town's good standing and, organizational documents and
Sure.
bureaucracy things. There's always forms.
Good.
But those are the two things, that the decisions from the select board standpoint, that, are you willing to have the town be the applicant with us administering it, and are you willing to provide a match of a not to exceed the $17,660?
Great. Questions for Robin?
No, it's very
It's
thorough.
great.
It's great work, and it definitely seems worthy to pursue.
Mhm.
And
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I guess we just have to figure out where to find the
Does anyone
funds.
have any objections to the town being the applicant?
No, I think
I
it
think
makes
there's-
a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't see any other way to, yeah. And maybe have, at some point, a meeting with the BNP to just kind of outline what's happening here so they can,
Well, so I've been in touch with, Jim knows about this, obviously.
Great.
I've been in touch with Karen Duguay. I've been facilitating a couple of those neighbors
good,
together things at St. Stephen's. So I saw Karen there, and they're having a little event tomorrow night with the downtown businesses right at
Yeah.
Flatbread. So I got myself invited to that meeting.
Okay.
So the timing is actually great, because
good.
I'm seeing you
Yeah.
tonight,
Okay.
and then I'll see whoever shows up tomorrow night. So, and Jim's already started talking to some of the businesses. So I think between the two of
Okay.
us and
great.
anybody else who wants to jump in,
Perfect.
we're going.
Do you need any kind of an action by us
I
tonight?
think if you're willing to vote to be the applicant,
Mhm.
that would be great. If you're willing to vote on the funds, I have to ask if the funds are committed. And what I wrote prior to April 16th, but I could also say the board voted to authorize a not to exceed.
Yeah.
I could put that
And
in there.
we could pursue how we're going to get that from DIDC or whatever.
Right.
Going forward.
Right, and I don't know how that all works, but the grant itself probably won't start until the next fiscal year, although you could probably escrow if you have funds kicking, right? I don't know how you'd work that, but if there's funds kicking around for FY16, maybe they could be escrowed for 17 as well.
We could ask the DIDC, and we have a board member that sits on that as
Right.
well, too.
That Gary?
ask for, yeah, for consideration for this, so, and Ken Bryan, I think, is the chair, so, and he's on our
Oh,
project
well.
manager, so we're,
All the right people.
yeah,
We've talked about this support
right.
for the last 2 or 3
Gary,
meetings.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in FY '15 and FY '16, the DIDC set aside $5,000 in each year to support the businesses in the downtown.
Mhm.
So as Robin says, with the timing of the grant, that'll be another fiscal year.
Right.
We're nearly there.
We're right there.
Yeah, so it sounds like you can find it.
Yeah,
I think so. I think it's,
we will
when I was on
find
the
it.
DIT, it's the kind of thing that they
Oh, yeah.
like
Yeah.
to support.
Well, it's all about leveraging the money, absolutely.
Exactly.
Right, and what better use right now?
Right.
So I move that the town of Middlebury be the applicant for a rural business development grant.
The revolving loan fund, or should we wait on that?
I think it's gonna be called a grant, I mean, that will.
Just leave it at that.
A grant, yeah, we'll decide the
Okay.
details of it.
Mhm.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And did that motion include the commitment from the town for not to exceed, is it
17,650?
Okay, and seconded by Susan?
Of course it included that, yes.
Thought it
So silly of me.
did. Just wondering.
Well, yeah, I heard it.
Any further discussion on that motion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're 6 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you very much, Robin. We
Great, thank
appreciate
you.
your help on this.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it
thanks for the
too,
work.
it's
Thanks, Robin.
really exciting to be able to try to offer something,
Yeah.
so.
And hopefully get some long-range benefit out of it. too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, going back to the other business from our meetings, the local project management team. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read the highlights. Do you recall, 3 weeks ago now, we started having the discussion again about the vertical clearance for the railroad bridges. We got the assessment from VHB as to what the potential cost savings and construction time savings would be if we reduced it to the 19-foot clearance from 21.6, and learned that it would be approximately 11 weeks shorter in construction time and approximately $4 million in cost savings for the project. And we had a conference call with Secretary Cole and Assistant Secretary Tatro and others, along with VHB. And it was at that time we learned that there were, after their research, they had determined that there could very well be a need for cars that would use the western corridor that would approach 20 feet in clearance needs, that being potential car carriers and passenger car that would have a dome on it for sightseeing and that sort of thing. So, and then earlier this week, we received the latest letter from Secretary Cole outlining the decisions by V-Trans with regard to that, and essentially feeling that the significant savings was not there to support moving forward with even a lower vertical clearance, and that based on the potential use of the rail by these other types of rail cars, that it would not likely be supported, in the Rail Council, which we're going to be meeting with next week, wouldn't support it either. So when we met today, we had another conference call, the local project management team with V-Trans, and talked about the highlights of that particular meeting, and also reviewed the letter that was submitted by Secretary Cole about the vertical clearance, appreciated their efforts on that, and agreed to cooperatively move forward to focus on how we can shorten the construction time and manage the impact collectively, with some goals of trying to get this down to a 2-year project, and working with the design engineers. It's still going to be a lot of work, but everybody is in agreement that that's a target that is achievable, and hopefully one that we can move to accomplish. Getting it down to 2 years would be a major step forward. And it starts with working with the design engineers who are working at different aspects of this project, changing it, how they accomplish it. We learned, and I think we might have mentioned this the last time too, that there is the potential now for not having to put a temporary bridge on Main Street, which would shorten up the construction period through that, if that works out, and other aspects of the construction that can go forward quicker and more efficiently. And then, of course, the discussion around having year-round construction versus shutting down every winter. So, well, we've done a lot. The essential part of that meeting was, I think we've eliminated the vertical clearance issue once and for all. It's time to move forward with the next aspect of that. At the same time, the committee's been working on the matrix and the decision where we're going to temporarily move Actor. And hopefully everybody had a chance to look at the matrix results, which were unanimous in looking at South Pleasant Street as our primary location. So we have a meeting scheduled for Thursday again this week. Part of that meeting is we're hoping to have the analysis from VHB on the alignment of the street at one way, how much parking we might be able to recover if we went to some diagonal parking. And in addition to that, we're hoping to get a look at the animation of some of the components of the construction project itself, what it would look like, what, you know, if they're going to be working on the bridges, what that component would look like, what the disruption would look like, and the beginning of having to view that. The other request we have in there, which we hope to have soon, would be the actual diagram of construction, now that we are focusing on this clearance and we can get back to getting those final plans done and moving forward. So a lot of work, but I think we've accomplished a lot. We've had some frustrations, obviously. We had hoped that there might be easier ways to get some of these things done, and we continue to pursue them. Donna, Nick, anything you want to add?
Said it all, Dean.
I think that's
No, I
it.
didn't say it all. It was a long couple of
No,
meetings.
you summed it up.
It was good enough.
No, you summed it up.
Laura?
I was just gonna say, I really do appreciate the time that you've put into it, and the Addison Independent had a good summary
They did.
today,
yeah.
too, I thought. Although the headline
I know.
was misleading.
It was very misleading.
Yeah, it's
Not
sometimes
raising.
we write
Yeah.
things to get attention where it's
But
not.
anyway,
Not
Um,
unusual.
It should be acknowledged that it went from 23 down to
yeah,
21.
Yeah.
so I did attend the Neighbors Together,
Good.
one of the sessions, and one of the things that was brought up, and one of the things that we're noticing here too, that if we're gonna have this kind of clearance, we should celebrate it for the
Right.
benefit we're gonna get, which is passenger rail and more freight options, so that
Mhm.
it's economically viable, you know, so we get those benefits, and we want rail to be
Right.
successful and safe, and that's what we will get with this project, so
And it's important too,
We
the
will
committee
focus
has right along
on its schedule.
been supportive of passenger rail service and freight service. That has not been an issue at all. In fact, if the case could be made, as Don has well stated, for 20 feet being the need, then we would support that. Our goal right along has been, if it's not going to be needed, don't waste the money, don't waste the resources of the town and the state and the federal government on something that could be done simpler. And so that's the goal we continue to pursue. And Jim Gish, our new community liaison, has been doing a lot of work, which we're really grateful for, and he's been very helpful, and we anticipate a lot of positive work from him. And at each of these meetings, there's a lot of people that attend these meetings and continue to, who are very concerned, from the Chamber of Commerce to the BMP to Robin Shy and others, St. Stephen's Church.
Mhm.
So they're like partners with us on this.
Mhm.
Questions? Anything else? So again, our next step is Thursday. We're going to be meeting with David Saldano to look at the South Street options, which we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of. And hopefully VHB will have the project review the animations of some of the components of the construction, so we can take a look at that. The other thing we're going to be discussing and working with Jim on is how we present this at town meeting.
Did you get an answer about the Exchange Street area?
We did not, but we had made some progress, only from the standpoint that the Deputy Secretary, Rich Tatro, when I spoke with him about that after our last meeting, wanted to know how the town would view potentially utilizing that, and I gave him some examples and suggested that he talk with Nancy Malcolm, the chair of the Planning Commission, because I know the Planning Commission has been working on that as well, which he did. He reached out to her, and they've begun to brainstorm that. Part of the issue is, well, the state owns the property, it's leased to the railroad, and the railroad's not gonna wanna give it up. So it's gonna be an effort on our part and V-Trans part to try to leverage that from the railroad, so to use it for town's advantage.
And the railroad wouldn't want to give it up because.
They don't wanna give up anything.
They don't want to give up facilities.
Yeah.
They figure if they had something at one time there, whether they're using it or not, they always
Yeah.
want to leave the possibility that they
Right.
could take it again.
So, you know, the possibility of using this as a multimodal facility for rail, buses, that sort of thing, I think might be appealing, and certainly our economic development of that area around Craig's Market, how we proceed with that.
I mean,
So-
would they support a multimodal use of the?
I think they're waiting for us to decide,
Okay.
and that's what we've told them, that it has that potential. But just understanding that that piece of property goes right through the parking area that was used by Greg's Market, was kind of news to them. But they've begun to take that serious. We've been asking this question now for 6 months, and now we've said this really is important to the town, and it would go a long way to helping us appease a lot of the concerns about this project, if that could happen. So I think they're taking it serious.
Yeah, we have no reason to think they're not supporting passenger rail. And the idea that the multimodal is just a connector and feeds passengers, but feeds revenue onto the passenger rail, so presumption is they would be supportive of it, but there's
It's
still
also
be-
their choice of where they would put the platform. I mean, they've already designated the 350-foot platform out that way, so
Right.
to put the multimodal station there would seem to be something that they would find desirable.
I think it's an opportune time to negotiate with Vermont Railway, too, because they are going
Yes,
through
it
a lot
is.
of
It's a very good time
tough issues, and they could come out a winner on one of these. Yeah,
Well, in fact, I think that was part of some of the information we received in the conversation today.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, if there's no other questions on that, why don't we move into our parking time limits for spaces behind the new town office and library? Chief Hanley, waiting so patiently.
Well, I'm happy that Chief Hanley is here. After I asked him to start off the conversation about what the parking limits might be, yeah, he's coughing, might be for the town office, he instantly gave me his honest opinion and was quickly contradicted by several other staff people. So you see, we had a
I know.
wide-ranging
Yeah.
conversation, taking 2 pages. So really, I think the chief urges us, whatever we decide, to have clear and consistent parking, and noting that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to enforce 30-minute parking limits, as some have envisioned behind the new town offices. So this is just to introduce you to this exchange and have you consider the possibility of having a public meeting on it after town meeting.
I think it makes good sense.
I think so too.
The 30-minute parking is always great. It's tough to, Tom.
I think just to figure this out, just figure out what you want the parking for. And you gotta consider that there's retail businesses around there, and you don't wanna designate it. But after many, many years of watching parking patterns downtown, we just came up with this 30-minute is impossible to enforce. Somebody has to be there all the time. But it tends to be a little, if you have somebody down there, it tends to be self-regulating. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, that's okay. The idea is people going in and out that need to transact business, either come to the clerk's office and just need a short-term space to come in and out. The upper parking lot for likewise short-term spaces for people that need to run into the library for a half an hour, town clerk's office, whatever happens to be, and use the longer parking more remote. Somebody has to program at the library, they're gonna be there for 2 or 3 hours, maybe they should park in one of the more remote spots and save those diminishing upper spots for people that really need to transact business. I don't know the day-to-day business here from working downstairs. I know there was constant in and out of this building all day long, and I suspect the same is true with the library with a lot of short-term stuff.
Right.
And so that was the thought when I first threw that out, not that this is the end-all of parking, but more as a consideration as to what do you want that parking there for? That really convenient up-close parking, whether running into Ben Franklin's, running, that sort of thing.
So, Tom, to clarify, the upfront parking would be in front of the library?
The four
Right.
spaces on Main Street right now would be short-term, that's what I had proposed.
Right, the 30-minute parking.
Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
then behind the library, behind the town offices, would be a little bit longer, but still, the idea was to get turnover,
Uh-huh.
so that.
So you
more
were
of those
suggesting an
spaces-
hour-ish?
I thought an hour would be good, I mean, that's up for
Mm-hmm.
discussion, but that's reasonable for people that need to maybe be here a little longer,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. But if you're gonna be going in the library for a program, or you're gonna be spending time downtown, going to a restaurant, you really need to be encouraged to park in those all-day spaces that aren't that far away, they're just around the corner. But leave those few spaces
And by,
available for more of the,
and you're only talking about the top row, not the other side?
just the top row, just
Okay.
the top row.
So the other side would still be longer-term parking toward the back, where it's outside of the box, like the green box, which is still
Yeah, that's all
what we
day.
call the
That's-
upper
that's
lot, but it's the back side of the upper lot. So that would be it.
The lower lot, you mean,
Lower line.
not the back side of the upper.
Isn't that the back of the upper lot? I'm looking
Are you
at,
suggesting the back side of the upper lot?
That entire upper lot.
Right, be 1 hour?
Oh,
Right.
it is.
Yes.
Both
that's what I
sides,
thought.
okay.
Both sides, that was a thought, and
Okay.
it's just reviewing the patterns of use that are gonna be in that immediate area. And figuring out what those patterns of use are gonna be. Do we need, how much turnover do you think would be reasonable? And if it's just one row, the row closest to the building, or the row on the other side, I don't know.
I think it would be easier to understand if the whole parking lot were 1 hour up top and.
Years ago, Dean, you remember that the parking down here was 15 minutes, an
Yeah,
hour, 30
I know.
minutes. An hour, 2 hours, and everywhere you went, there were different signs, green ones, red ones, black and white ones. And you didn't know where any of the parking was, and you couldn't enforce any of it. So when we made everything downtown 2 hours, it really just seemed to be uniform, and that was after a study we did on parking turnover, where
Right.
most of the people were in and out in 2 hours. Then you had people that were there longer than 2 hours, a lot longer than 2 hours, 4 and 5 hours. So we didn't have that kind of in-between 3-hour parking. So the thought was just to at least get the discussion going on what kind of turnover do you think is gonna be necessary for the town office, the library, Ben Franklin, maybe across the street in that immediate area. What that quick turnover is gonna be and the needs are to provide that parking.
and handicap parking would not have a time limit, right?
Handicap parking has no time limit.
Do you have any thoughts about what they've done at the co-op with senior and then families with small children? They have certain spots. And I know other people do park in there, but it's been very successful at the co-op, especially just to have a couple of spots that are that way, that it's not handicapped, but it's for people that have, because if you're a mom with 2 little kids and a baby carrier, it's a challenge to.
I was a dad with 2 little kids, so I get it.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not sure if you even knew that there were spots like that at the co-op
Yes,
up
I've
near
seen
the
spots, yeah,
the
for seniors.
front, and it's just wildly popular.
That's part of the discussion. The other thing, just to be aware of, years ago, we amended the ordinance, so in the downtown parking district, you don't have to go through the ordinance process to change any of the time.
Oh, okay.
You just put it in the minutes of the meeting if that's what you decide, and then we can go forth there. So
Right.
there's no ordinance process. We got away from that because every time you moved the parking space, you had to go through the ordinance process. and it got incredibly cumbersome. So I throw that out just as kind of something to think about and consider. What is gonna be the use there, and then design the parking for the specific use that you anticipate in the building,
Right.
as opposed to make any kind of sweeping
Stuff.
declaration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion about having behind the library, like, at least one spot that says 15 minutes? I mean, obviously, you're not gonna, you can't challenge and enforce it, but it's like pickup at a restaurant or something. People that just wanna go in that side door and drop off their books.
Tax
What-
payments only.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that one spot is.
I've wondered
The
about
turnover
that
should
too,
be
just the
pretty
one
rapid.
spot.
All you're trying to do is to stop your car, run in and return your books.
People tend to use the handicap parking spot
Right.
that way.
Yeah.
Right, and I mean, it just seems like one spot could maybe be 15-minute drop-off books, or
With a
just say
red sign.
drop-off.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
But that goes to what I'm talking about. Figure out what your use is.
Yes, I
gonna be,
agree.
Yeah.
And then we'll just just
And
come
make
up
it
with a
that.
proposal for the parking that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
that's gonna be responsive to that.
But to your
Makes
point of
sense.
trying to be consistent, how would you feel about that, like one spot being a 15-minute
That's fine,
drop
it's
off?
easy to mark one spot.
Okay.
That is not a problem, a 15-minute spot. We had 2 spots there that were designated for
Tenants.
Tenants.
college residents.
Right.
Yeah.
Parking lot.
Tenant, yeah.
Tenants.
The college actually marked the spots for us.
Mhm.
But so that works. It's when you have these zones that are indecipherable, where one ends and the other one
Mhm.
begins,
Mhm.
is where you start getting very difficult. People don't know where they're supposed to park or how long they can park anywhere.
Oh,
So,
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
So, food for thought. Won't be long, we'll have to make that decision. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Request for review of the policy for the appropriation of aid to health and human service programs with the intent of clarifying how new requests for funding will be voted on by the town. And Susan has provided us with a brief little, short little amendment.
Tried to make it as unintrusive as
And
possible.
it was.
And I ran it by Ann Webster already, just because she's the one that has to sort of take people through and agencies through the process. So, yeah, I mean, I think the question was,
Who's up that question?
we hadn't really addressed the fact in the policy of how we vote on new petitions that are coming in. So this isn't if somebody wants to increase their budget, or reduce it. I shouldn't ever leave
Right.
that possibility out. That this is new petitions coming in, and so we're stating that they would be voted by Australian ballot.
Makes
So,
good sense.
one little sentence in there, well, tacking on to the end of the sentence. So if people are good with that, then
Anybody have any concerns about that?
I don't know if the policy committee wanted to run it by them. It doesn't bother me either
Does the
way.
policy committee want to review this in and of itself?
This is only for brand new,
Right.
someone that has not
Yes.
received funding previously.
Correct.
I think we're comfortable with that. We sort of briefly talked about it, Gary, didn't we?
I can't recall, but I'm
If you guys
comfortable
wanna-
with
I think Chris mentioned it the last time, just in passing, that you were
Yeah.
concerned about it and it seemed reasonable. That's a great way to handle it for any kind of first-time
Yeah.
request.
And
We're
you're
comfortable
welcome,
with that.
you're welcome to look at it and
I think we're-
weigh in on it, but.
I think we're quite good with it. We'd be
Okay.
happy to add it to it,
Sure.
if we have a
Okay.
motion for it.
Mhm.
Yes. Would someone care to move that?
Sure. Hang on a second, let me see, get it. Let's see, so I make a motion to, oh, this was to refer the question to the policy thing. So make a motion to amend, hang on, the policy for the appropriation of aid to health and human services programs for the benefit of Middlebury residents. Do I have to say what the amendment is?
Yeah, that would specify petitions for new funding be
To s-
voted with by Australian
Oh,
ballot.
okay, see,
That's it.
no,
Mhm.
Kathleen changed her little layout and I'm all confused now. So, to specify the means which petitions for new funding will be voted upon, i.e. the floor vote or Australian ballot, and in this case, it's Australian ballot. Sorry, too many words.
It's okay. Is there a second to Susan's short motion?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the amendment to the
Been a long
procedure
night.
section of that. Policy, any further discussion on that? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're 6 in favor and 1 absent. Before we leave that subject, I thought this would be a good point to maybe bring this up. In my discussion this past week with Governor Douglas about the agenda for upcoming town meeting, I was reviewing with him the town's process this year and going over what things we anticipate were going to be discussed. And one of them was the discussion from those social agencies which have requested additional funding. And he said, well, where's that going to go? And I said, well, I would presume under other business that they would make their explanation of what they're using town funds for. He said, well, at that point, nothing can be changed. And I really hadn't given that any thought as to, we have put in the additional funding that those agencies have requested, and then we're gonna have them sort of justify it after the town has approved the funding, and whether we wanna give thought to, should that come at a different time in case that funding's not supported, or how do we wanna proceed with that?
I thought we did it at a different time last year.
We did it during the budget presentation,
Yeah.
during the question and answers on the budget.
So we would have them speak during our presentation of the budget?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And how many do we have? We could almost
have-
do all of them in a
we
row,
think-
because weren't we gonna try to do the
Yeah.
presentation a little differently this year?
Yep.
They
Is it
went-
four
We
of them?
are.
They went boom, boom, boom last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Okay.
went
Have them
pretty
do
quick.
them all
So
right
it'll
around.
be during the budget presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Okay.
clear as mud.
Exactly.
I could talk about it for a while.
That's all right, we're good. Okay, approval of the check warrants.
That's me.
Mr. Baker.
I examined the check warrants this afternoon, and I find no fault with them. We have total expenditures this period of 127.16 through 29.16 of $620,600.79, which comprised of accounts payable of $531,212.84, and payroll of this is through the 19th, of $89,387.95.
Is there a motion to approve those check warrants?
So moved.
Moved by Donna, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Laura. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the check warrants as reported by Gary. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are 6 in favor, 1 absent. Town manager's report, Kathleen.
Just a quick follow-up, all of your hard work on the budget. As required by charter, I prepared a chart for publication in the newspaper summarizing what our projected tax rate would be and reporting on what the school is estimating out. And the good news is between our level funding and the residential education tax rate projected to go down by nearly 12 cents, we should be seeing a 12-cent reduction in tax rate next year. if
That's
things,
good.
go as estimated.
Yay.
So I just want to share that good news.
Yeah.
That's enough then.
That works.
And that's all I've got.
I don't think I've heard
I
that
didn't mean
before.
that necessarily.
A little stunned.
Where's John Flowers?
Yeah, exactly.
That is really nice.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. Board member concerns, Nick?
This time? Well, you know, Kathleen asked me today if I would do this, and my answer was yes and no. Yes, because it's been an honor to share this board experience with Dean. No, because I want it to continue. And you know, for me, it's both professional and personal. I mean, professional because we've had 6 years on this board together. You're the one who kind of convinced me to be a part of it, but also personal because for 22 years you've been my next door neighbor and friend. And I think when I moved in, I never had the thought that we would be sharing this experience of chair and vice chair living next door to each other. And
Well, that's because you were scared to death of me with the marked cruiser in the yard.
that's in fact what happened. When we moved in, there were 4 police cars in the driveway next door, and I thought, what kind of neighborhood did I just move into? But it's been fantastic. And anyway, I know the change is going to happen. And so from all of us on this board, you know, we appreciate the time together, and from all of us in this town who, you know, who serve this town, we appreciate it, and certainly from every citizen of Middlebury, we share this. And so this year's dedication of the town report is to Dean George. And it will say, Dean George was first elected to the Select Board in 1996 and became the chair in 2012. In the past 20 years on the board, he has seen a share of compelling issues and complicated projects. Dean was here to see the completion of the new wastewater treatment plant in the industrial park, the new police headquarters on Lucas Shaw Lane, and the expansion and reconstruction of both fire stations. He's also been here to see several bridges repaired and reconstructed, the Grist Mill Bridge, the Lower Plains Road Bridge, Sand Hill Bridge, and the Pulp Mill Bridge, as well as the construction of the Cross Street Bridge. Wrapping up his tenure on the board, he can also include to this list a new town office building and a new recreation facility on Creek Road. Dean has also been involved in current projects that he will leave his predecessors to see through completion: the development of the EDI site in Bakery Lane and the reconstruction of the railroad bridges on Main Street and Merchants Row. These are just a few of the many things that Dean has touched in his 20 years on the board, and we thank him for all the countless hours he gave and for his commitment and dedication to making this town a better place for all of us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
That's very nice.
Ooh, there's a thing too.
And this, courtesy of our town manager.
Oh,
So there you are.
cool, thank you very much. Who's that guy?
That's
great.
before and after picture.
I know.
Oh, we have those.
Oh, we do, don't we?
Oh, good,
That's
okay.
great, thank you, everyone. It's been
Thank
my
you.
pleasure to be on the board, too.
And I
It's,
have nothing else to add.
well, that's good. That's enough. Yeah. I was thinking tonight, I was just telling my wife before I came to the meeting, I said, you know, I'm only gonna have one left after this. And I went back and just did some quick math. It'll be 499 out of 500.
Wow. So you should come to one
Come on,
more.
come
Oh, yeah,
on.
500 will be the next one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And as
Thank
far
you.
as the projects of the predecessors, one of the advantages, we do know where you live.
Yeah, I know.
Their help is
Thank
always
you.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank all of you, too. I appreciate it. It's been great working with all of you.
It's nice.
And I think the town is in great hands going forward.
Cool.
Good. Thanks, Nick. Susan?
I'm not gonna even try and follow that with anything. Thank you.
No, I have no more comments to add except a very big thank you and wish I were gonna, you're a wonderful mentor and wish you were gonna be here even longer. So thank you.
Well, I'm not going anywhere. Laura?
Yes, speaking of town meeting,
Yeah.
I was thinking about a poll that we might put in front of folks, sort of Doyle poll style. I'd call it the Middlebury Town Meeting poll. The Middlebury Energy Committee typically does a little poll, and we've been talking about it. But as I've been listening to things that we've been talking about, I saw the opportunity to do a broader poll, and we don't want to poll people to death. And we're already doing a transportation survey, so I'm going to recommend to the Energy Committee that we forego an Energy Committee poll at town meeting that we typically do as people exit, and replace it with this, which is a broader one. And like the Energy Committee poll, the intent is really to use the poll to inform people, to let them know about the communication opportunities that they have to be informed. So they're just really getting informed more than anything else, but it's an indication to us also if they're using what we have available to them to get good information. So, for example, are they aware of surveys that we're doing? So I know that there's a Park and Rec survey, interest survey out there right now, and that, of course, the Energy Committee will have a transportation survey, and that this just directs them to go and seek those out if they haven't filled them out yet. Are they aware of town email lists? And then they're invited to have an opportunity to sign up for the town email lists if they haven't already. Are they aware of upcoming events like our open houses and other signature events that we have this spring? So again, it's just informing them and making them aware of those upcoming events. Do they know about all these websites, these fantastic websites we have, and the depth of information that's available at our fingertips? From the Town of Middlebury website, where you can get the links to our special projects and our budget, to the experience.middlebury.org website, which is where you can register online for our Parks and Rec Committee programs. And people might not know that, so this is an opportunity to inform them of these things that I'm not going to read the whole list to you, but you can see how rich this is. Like, who would know that the fire department has a website and that you could actually get the application for becoming a member of the fire department right there online, and you can get these other cool safety tips that you can go to Middlebury Community TV and you can watch our public meetings and see all these fantastic interviews of locals. So it's very rich. So So they could indicate whether they've gone to any of those websites. And then at the bottom, we could ask any questions that we want, maybe just kind of a rough idea of where people are standing on certain things. And I just put about 5 of them down here for us to look at, and they could be changed. We don't have to ask any of them. But I suggested these, I just wanted them to know again that they could request a free energy visit to assess their home or business's efficiency, and to let us know if they want that. Maybe they could tell us something about solar arrays, because that's been a hot topic. So this question would just ask them if they support construction in various locations and indicate where they favor them, because siting has been such a hot issue. Parking spaces we just talked about, so we don't have to ask this, but we could see how people feel about the time limit. Do they support 1 hour or 2 hours for those parking spots that we just talked about behind the library and the town offices? The K-9 unit, do they support the concept of the K-9 unit? The railroad bridge construction, if there was a question related to that, I don't know what it is, but maybe it's around the time limits for getting the construction done. If we wanted to see people's tolerance for working shorter or having a few breaks in between. So that was the idea, and I just wanted your feedback on whether this is a good direction and whether to proceed.
Thoughts?
I'm fine with it. I think you do other questions every year, and
Yeah.
it's, it's informational, and it's the information goes both ways, out to them and back to us, so it's good to me.
If, why don't we take some time, and if there's
Mhm.
things that we want to add to this or something, maybe suggest Laura add them to the list,
Yep.
or take them off if there's something you don't want on there, and we can maybe finalize it at our next meeting.
Yep, and the formatting needs some polishing, which
Yeah.
we'll do to make it a little more readable.
Great. Thank you for doing that, Laura.
Thank you,
welcome.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Okay.
Great. Anything else?
Well, I am curious about how we are thinking of presenting a town meeting, but
Okay.
maybe we're
I'll-
taking that up at another meeting.
I'll give you my overview and then get your feedback. How's that?
Okay.
Thank you. Jerry?
This is just comments.
Yes.
I am concerned about what Paul said. I've been hearing an undercurrent of this, but never anything, that there was a solicitor out there. But in retrospect, after hearing this, I guess there has been one, and some people are really angry about it.
Yeah, I didn't realize businesses were getting solicited at all, and that's,
Did the committee realize it?
No.
Not to that extent, and
No,
we will
no.
address it.
It was really
Okay.
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
so we're gonna address it.
Good. That's it.
Okay. Couple of things. One is just kind of an update on the rec center and the town office. I had a conversation early this evening with Chris Huston, and just kind of updating that the rec center is done, and Terry is moving in, I think, tomorrow. The furniture is going in today, or went in today. So that building is essentially complete, and the town office is on schedule for being completed by the end of the month. And he was relating to me that they did a presentation to Efficiency Vermont, who were just very excited about, the whole process and the efficiency of the town office in particular. And he anticipates they're going to be submitting it for awards next year for its efficiency and energy use. And we'll have it completed, moving in and getting sense of how it works and everything by then. So he's very pleased with that. So if you haven't been through, you stop by the rec center at some point, take a look at that. The town office too, if you get a chance. If you haven't been through recently, take another walk through. It's great. It's coming along very quickly, and everything is still on budget. So it's amazing. The other thing, just to quickly answer your question, Laura, Kathleen and I have been talking a little bit about the process, and what I'm hoping we can do, we talked about this before, is have Kathleen and Chris are working on sort of a brief presentation that we will use with the screen, probably a PowerPoint type thing to review the budget. My thought is that we would review the whole budget and then have board members be ready to respond to components of it with the department head that sort of corresponds with it. For example, Susan in Public Works for questions that may come up about that part of the budget, if there are any. If not, it would be a relatively quick but more illustrative description of the budget. I think it should go a little easier and flow better. Hopefully we'll have something for everybody to look at. And Susan, I was going to ask you the section that deals with the equipment part of it. Have you present that information and whether we need any slides for that or not, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But that's a separate article, so
Yeah. Okay.
since you were involved in most of the equipment
Sure.
part of that.
Did you want me to do capital improvements too?
Well, if capital improvements is going to be part of that
That whole
single
thing?
budget
Single thing?
presentation, if
Okay.
there are capital improvement questions,
Okay.
what I anticipate is, for example, if there are public works and capital improvement related questions that come up after the presentation, then I would ask you and Dan Warner to respond to them, and then have each of us responsible for a component of the budget. There may not be any questions, but if there are, then
Just
you
to
would
be
be
ready.
prepared to respond to them.
Okay.
Okay,
How's that sound?
okay.
Not too different from what we've done before, but just,
Except that we're not presenting.
that's
Right,
right,
Presenting.
right.
that's right.
Right, rather than go through all the minutia of each detail, so.
We're ready in the background, but
And the other part of
If
it
you want
is,
the minutia, we have it.
yeah,
get the
we'll
minutia.
be ready for it.
Right.
At the same time, we know that Ruth Hardy and the ID4 board are going to be starting their presentation for their annual meeting, and then the discussion around the consolidation at 6, and there will be a transition at 7 or thereabouts. Ann is prepared to be admitting people
Mhm.
fluidly as the night goes on. I don't anticipate everyone that comes to town meeting is also going to come to the 6 o'clock meeting. I hope a lot of people do. I think this is important for them to get this information out, to be able to make an informed decision voting on it at town meeting. But it may go beyond 7 o'clock, so we're just going to be flexible in that area and hope that, we can make a smooth transition and move from that presentation 2 hours. And we anticipate having some sort of a presentation on the local project, the railroad bridge project. Jim Gish is going to be working on that. We're hoping to have something outside the ropes for people to look at as they come in, and then under other business, review what's going on and talk about the process. Hopefully that most of the decisions about start times and timelines and that sort of thing will be in place by then, so we can focus on that. So,
So I understand the presentation format. I'm just trying to think about ways that we make sure that people are informed about the budget ahead of the meeting. And I know that the plan is to send them a postcard instead of the typical town mailer that we've done. And that they'll be directed that they can get their full town report at the town offices or online. And that it'd be good for us to make it easy, for them to do that. So I think that we talked about that, and there just being a place on the home site that's easy to click on, so you don't have to click and click and click to
Yeah.
find,
Yeah.
that report, and that we can look forward to that, I think, very soon. So,
yeah,
Friday.
Friday.
good.
So for viewers.
Postcards
tonight
are
they-
flying. I got another one today from the Hannaford Career Center. So,
Yeah, I got one too.
yeah, UD3.
But that is a change.
It is, yeah. Anything else or any suggestions? Happy to weigh in on that. We'll try to have an overview for our next board meeting. Great. Okay, so we will be meeting next on the 26th, is it? 26th. Yes. Okay, we have a brief executive session for
We're meeting
a.
on the Friday the 20.
Contracts?
We're meeting Friday, the 26th?
No,
23rd.
Tuesday, the 23rd.
That's what-
Everybody agreed. I just threw the number out there.
I thought you said 26.
I did.
Okay,
23rd then.
yeah,
All right.
good.
We do have an executive session need for a brief contract matter.
Contract.
Susan?
In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of contracts would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the contract in public.
Is there a second to Susan's motion?
Second.
Seconded by Gary. Those in favor of the first motion signify by saying aye.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss the contract under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
And a second to that motion.
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Those in favor of the second motion to go into executive session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are unanimous, 6 in favor, 1 absent, and we will go into executive session. Thank you.
In a minute.